is SA 530, audit sampling. Why an auditor needs the support of this standard? This standard will help you to a lot in your audit sampling, because an auditor is always in lack of time to do the entire audit. So he needs to select the sample for the audit purpose. We can't do the entire audit in detail because there are lakhs of transactions or there's thousands of transactions done in the company in the entire year. But as we go and do the audit only for say 10 or 15 days, so it is not possible to vouch, to verify each and everything in detail. So in order to base our opinion on the entire financial statements, we take the support of audit sampling. Let us have a look that what we are going to study in this essay. Overview. The first topic will be audit sampling 530, meaning, approach, sample, design, size and selection of items for testing, performing audit procedure, nature and cause of deviations and misstatement, evaluating the results. Means हम पहले meaning देखेंगे, then we will see the approach, then how a sample is selected, how the design is selected, how the size is determined, how the items are selected for testing, how we will do our audit procedure, what are the nature and what are the causes of deviations, and finally we will evaluate our results. Now, explain sampling as an audit procedure. With the shift in the favor of formal internal controls in the management of the affairs of the organization, the possibilities of routine errors and frauds have greatly diminished, and auditors often find extensive routine checking as nothing more than a ritual because it seldom reveals anything material. Means they are clearly telling that as far as the organizations are concerned, now to do the routine checking is not relevant, as even if we do the routine check, there is no guarantee that the material misstatements, we will be able to find out the material misstatements. But इतना करने के बाद भी, if you are not having that satisfaction that हमको जो चाहिए, जो mistakes, जो fraud हमको मिलना चाहिए, that is not, you are not able to detect it, then what is the need of routine checking? And that's why we are resorting to sampling. Next. Now the approach to audit and the extent of checking are changed in favor of more attention towards the questions of principles and controls with a curtailment of non-consequential routine checking. Now, instead of the other things, हमारा focus, we are more focusing on whether the principles are followed or not and whether the controls are applied or not in the organization. We are not focusing on the routine checks more. We are more concerned with whether the organization is following each and everything ethically or not, or whether the controls are being applied in the organization or not. By routine checking, we traditionally think of extensive checking and vouching of all entries. The extent of checking to be undertaken is primarily a matter of judgment of the auditor. There is nothing statutorily stated anywhere which specifies what work is to be done. This all we also know that extent of checking depends on our judgment, on an auditor's judgment. कितना check करना चाहिए, क्या check करना चाहिए, whether all the entries have to be checked or whether a particular month's only 10 entries should be checked, that all depends on our judgment. Nowhere it is written that what needs to be checked and what not need to be checked. It is up to the judgments of the auditor. How it is to be done and at to what extent. It is also not obligatory that the auditor must adopt the sampling technique. What he is to do is to express his opinion and become bound by that. Again, कहीं पे ऐसा नहीं लिखा है. Nowhere it is written that audit sampling is to be done. That sampling is compulsory to be done. But ultimately you need to state your opinion. मतलब आपको अपना opinion देना है. And your opinion should be such that you should be bound by that. You are giving some opinion, and whether you resort to sampling or not, it is up to you. Ultimately, you are bound by your opinion. To ensure good and reasonable standard of work, he should adopt the standards and work. He should adopt standards and techniques that can lead him to an informed professional opinion. He should be well informed about the culture. He should have a good and reasonable standard of work. सारे standards he need to follow, he need to work accordingly, he need to adopt such techniques as he is able to derive a professional opinion. On a consideration of this fact, it can be said that it is in the interest of the auditor that if it decides to form his opinion on the basis of a part checking, he should adopt standards and techniques which are widely followed and which have a recognized basis. Now, they are telling that because we want that auditor should base his opinion and should form his opinion professionally, in the interest of auditor, we are advising you that please follow some standards, some techniques, because you don't want to do the full checking. हमको पूरा check नहीं करना है. We only want to do the part checking. We only want to do check some transactions, and for that उन्होंने हमको एडवाइस किया है कि वी शुड अडॉप्ट द स्टैंडर्ड्स, वी शुड यूज़ द टेक्निक्स. हमको कोई स्टैंडर्ड्स, कोई टेक्निक से काम करना चाहिए. Since statistical theory of sampling is based on a scientific law, it can be relied upon to a greater extent that any arbitrary technique which lacks in basis and acceptability. They are advising you that statistical theory is more relevant for the audit sampling purpose because it can be relied upon. No doubt, we will be going to discuss the techniques also, and in that आपको पता चलेगा there are two techniques, sampling and non-sampling. Statistical and non-statistical. Statistical techniques are more relied upon as far as the non-statistical techniques are concerned. We need to see why and what is the procedure of statistical and what is the procedure of non-statistical. But in the introduction part, आपको सिर्फ ऐसा बोल रहे हैं कि statistical is to be relied upon. What is the meaning of sampling? According to the SA 530, audit sampling refers to the application of audit procedures to less than 100% of the items within a population of audit relevance such that all sampling units have a chance of selection in order to provide the auditor with a reasonable basis on which to draw conclusions about the entire population. Please underline the word that you are applying your technique not on the population. Population, what is the population? We are gonna discuss the definition of population in the next slides. But हमारा ऑडिट सैम्पलिंग जो बोल रहे हो, व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ सैम्पलिंग? सैम्पलिंग मीन्स अ सैम्पल. ओके, लेट्स टेक एन एग्जाम्पल. यू आर गिवन अ केक एंड यू आर जस्ट टेस्टिंग अ पार्ट ऑफ इट. यू आर टेकिंग अ पीस एंड यू आर टेस्टिंग इट. आपको केक दिया है, आप उसमें से एक पीस उठा के टेस्ट कर रहे हो. what render you the opinion क्या होगा आपका? that the whole cake is good. आप टेस्ट किया, आपको टेस्ट अच्छा लगा, देन यू विल डिराइव योर ओपिनियन ऑन द फुल केक दैट द केक इज गुड एंड यू टेस्टेड द सैम्पल ओनली. दैट इज व्हाट वी आर डूइंग इन द ऑडिट ऑल्सो. मीन्स वी विल टेस्ट अ सैम्पल ऑफ द ट्रांजेक्शन और हम जो ओपिनियन देंगे वो पूरे के पूरे ट्रांजेक्शन्स मतलब पूरे फिनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स के ऊपर देने वाले हैं. Our opinion would be based on the entire financial statements, but we will be auditing only a few samples. That is, they have written that less than 100% we are gonna test, and we are going to base our opinion on the entire population. Again, 100%, less than 100% of items within a population of audit relevance such that every sampling unit have a chance of selection. No biasness needs to be done in order to provide the auditor with a reasonable basis on which to draw conclusions about the entire population. The objective of auditor when using the audit sampling is to provide a reasonable basis for the auditor to draw conclusions about the population from which the sample is selected. What is the objective of the auditor? He will draw conclusions about the entire population from a part of the sample that is selected. Means if you want to vouch the sales of the entire year, you will not check each and every transactions. What you will do, you will check the month of say October, you will check the say month of the May, and you will randomly select. You can use the statistics also, you can use the non-statistical techniques also. Say first 5 transactions, say middle 5 transactions. That is all we gonna study, that how sampling is done. But why sampling is done? Because we want to draw our conclusions for the entire population based on a sample. What is the meaning of population? Population refers to the entire set of data from which a sample is selected and about which the auditor wishes to draw conclusions. Now, population is data that from which a sample is to be selected. Means the population is sales and a sample is to be selected is the precisely a monthly sales or precisely a weekly sales is the sample taken out of the population. The auditor should select sample items in such a way that sample can be expected to be the representative of the population. Now, while selecting a sample, you need to select sample in such a way that it results, it give us the results what population is trying to derive. But samples should be the representative of the population. Sampling can be true also, sampling can be wrong also, but it all depends on your judgment, how you are selecting a sample. If you are selecting the sample that is representative of the population, then your opinion will bound to be the correct regarding the entire population. This requires that all the items in the population have an opportunity of being selected. Each and every item should have equal opportunity of being selected. What are the characteristics of population? Explain with the example. First characteristics, appropriateness. The auditor will need to determine that the population from which the sample is drawn is appropriate for the specific audit objective. Example, if the auditor's objective were to test for the overstatement of accounts receivable, the population could be defined as the accounts receivable listing. Now, they are telling the characteristics, discussing the characteristics. First characteristics of population is that population should be appropriate. What do they mean by the word appropriate? Appropriate means it should be such that you are taking the sample out of the required population. It should be appropriate. They have given you the example that if you are taking some few example of account receivables, overstatement of accounts receivable, then what will be the population? The account receivable listing. For checking the overstatement of accounts receivable, हमारा population होगा accounts receivable listing. So that is appropriate population. Second example, on the other hand, when testing for understatement of accounts payable, कि accounts payable means that creditors are being understated, the population would not be the accounts payable. Population हमारे लिए क्या हो जाएगा? But rather subsequent disbursements, unpaid invoices, supplier statements, unmatched receiving reports or other population that would provide audit evidence of understatement of accounts payable. Okay, because the accounts payable are being understated, then the proper population for that purpose is not the accounts payable listing. The proper population for that might be you need to check what are the unpaid invoices, means invoice has still being unpaid. Supplier statements have not been matched with the receiving reports, and other populations that would provide the audit evidence. Means you need to select such population what you want to derive. Your derivation should be based on that population. So they have given you just an example that your population should be appropriate. The individual items that make up the population are known as sampling units. The population can be divided into sampling units in a variety of ways. Now, the individual items in the population are known as sampling units. You can divide these sampling units into a variety of ways. Individual item in the population is known as sampling units. Example, if the auditor's objective were to test the validity of accounts receivables, the sampling unit could be defined as customer balances or individual customer invoices. The auditor defines the sampling unit in order to obtain an efficient and effective sample to achieve the particular audit objectives. Now they have given the example of the debtors, that is account receivable. In order to check the accounts receivable balances, your sampling unit will be each and every individual's account. मतलब हमारा population हो जाएगा receivables, that is debtors, and each and every individual's name and invoices will become our sampling unit. So this is how we are deriving sample from the population, and in order to achieve the desired objective. Next comes, it is important for the auditor to ensure that the population is appropriate to the objective of the audit procedure, which will include the consideration of the direction of testing. Means you need to take care that the population is appropriate, because if the population is not appropriate, whatever results we will get we will not get the desired results. Second characteristics of population is completeness. The population also needs to be complete, which means that if the auditor intends to use the sample to draw the conclusions about whether a control activity operated effectively during the financial reporting period, the population needs to include all relevant items from throughout the entire period. Now, as far as the selection is concerned, first the population needs to be appropriate, means what is the population, then the samples to be selected will render the objective that we want to achieve. Second, it should be complete. Complete in the sense that all the transactions of the entire year should be covered in the same population. Then only we can achieve the target or the whatever we are trying to achieve from the said population, whatever we are trying to derive from the said population. So completeness say that the population needs to include all the relevant items from throughout the entire period. Third is reliable. The population should be reliable. When performing the audit sampling, the auditor performs the audit procedures to ensure that information upon which the audit sampling is performed is sufficiently complete and accurate. How you will say that population should be reliable? Reliable means the information should be complete, it should be accurate. The population should be complete and it should be accurate. It should not be like that the information is half and you are deriving the sample from the half information. So first characteristics, the population should be appropriate. The second characteristics, the population should be complete. The population details should be complete. And the third characteristics is the population data should be reliable. So appropriate, completeness and reliable are the three characteristics of the population. अगर population accurate होगी तो population complete होगी, and अगर population का data reliable होगा then only आपका sample accurate आएगा, then only your sample will be accurate, your sample will be reliable and your sample will be appropriate. Please take care in mind the three characteristics of population. So the next topic we start with is how many approaches are there for sampling. Now we will move on to a new topic, that is approach for sampling. There are two approaches, statistical sampling and non-statistical sampling. Then that is, we can use two methods. We can use statistics also and we can use other methods also in which statistics will not be useful. So first we will discuss that what is statistical sampling and then we will discuss that what is non-statistical sampling. Statistical sampling have the following characteristics. First, an approach to sampling that has the random selection of the sampling items. Underline the word random selection, means in the statistical sampling every sample has an equal chance of being selected from the population. An approach to sampling that has the random selection of sampling items. Second, the use of probability theory to evaluate the sample results. हम probability theory use कर रहे हैं. In which approach? In statistical approach. क्यों use कर रहे हैं? To evaluate the sample results. First, we are selecting random sample. Random selection is done. Second, we are evaluating the sample results by using the probability theory. And third, the use of probability theory including measurement of sampling risk characteristics, means probability theory is used for two purposes, for evaluating the sample results and for measurement of the sampling risk. These three characteristics are the part of statistical sampling. If you find these three characteristics, means you are using the statistical approach. So if we look over how to remember the 3 points, then first you need to take care that characteristics of sample of statistical sampling method, that random selection is to be done. Second, probability theory is used for evaluating the results. Sample select हो गया, now you want to see the results, then you will use probability. Then evaluating the results, now we will decide whether there is any sampling risk or not, and for that purpose also we will use the probability theory. So random selection, probability theory to use we will be using to evaluating the results, and probability theory we will be using for measuring the sampling risk. These are the characteristics of statistical sampling. If you don't find any of these characteristics, means you are using the other part, that is the non-statistical sampling. The next point is, a sampling approach that does not have the above characteristics is considered the non-statistical sampling. The decision whether to use a statistical or non-statistical sampling approach is a matter for the auditor's judgment. However, the sample size is not a valid criteria to distinguish between the statistical and the non-statistical approach. So again, they have clearly mentioned to use the statistical or non-statistical. That is up to the auditor's judgment. Means auditor will decide कि whether we should use the statistical method or whether we should use the non-statistical method. But sample size से आप decide नहीं कर सकते कि in statistics we can use the small sample, or non-statistical sampling we need to check the more samples. That is not a valid criteria to distinguish between the two. So we discussed the first statistical samplage. How many approaches were there? Two approaches. First approach statistical, second approach was non-statistical. First approach says characteristics, three characteristics, random selection. Second characteristics, probability theory for evaluating the results, and third characteristic, probability theory for measuring the risk. अगर ये तीन characteristics you don't find, हमको ये तीन characteristics नहीं मिलती है, means we are using the non-statistical approach. Whether we should use statistical, whether we should use non-statistical, it totally depends on auditor's judgment, that is on our judgment. It does not depend on sample size. Next point, sample must be representative. Whatever may be the approach, non-statistical or statistical, the sample must be representative. मतलब आप जो भी select करो, आप statistical method select कर रहे हो या आप non-statistical method select कर रहे हो, ultimately what is the purpose? Your purpose is that वो sample population का representative होना चाहिए. That sample should be the representative of the population. Means whatever you are selecting, it must match the population criteria. Next point. This means that it must be closely similar to the whole population, although not necessarily exactly the same. Obviously, because you are selecting a sample, they are not asking you that whatever sample you are selecting, it should exactly match the population. Means 100% exactness is not needed. What they are asking you, even closely similar sample भी होगा ना, तो भी we will consider that it is the part of this population and it represents the population. मतलब 100% sample representative population का होना ही चाहिए, that is not needed. We can use closely similar sample and it must be representative of the population. The next point is, the sample must be large enough to provide statistically meaningful results. Sample इतना होना चाहिए कि we can derive some meaningful results. The first method, that is statistical sampling, it is more scientific. Obviously, it is based on the science. Audit testing done through this approach is more scientific than testing based entirely on the auditor's own judgment, because it involves the use of mathematical laws of probability in determining the appropriate sample size in varying circumstances. Means whatever, whenever you will test the sample, आप sample test करोगे, but whenever you आप use कर रहे हो the statistical sampling, the sample you will select will more or less resemble to the population, because you are using the mathematical laws of probability, you are using some scientific techniques. So obviously this method is more reliable. And another method is that auditor will select the sample based on his own judgment. Whatever he feels correct, he will select the sample out of the population. But if we compare both the methods, then we can clearly say that statistical results tend to be more reliable than the non-statistical, because statistics वाले जो results होंगे वो probability theory based होंगे, हमने mathematics use किया है, तो obviously वो ज़्यादा we can rely upon it. Statistical sampling has reasonably wide application where a population to be tested consists of a large number of similar items, and more in the case of the transactions involving compliance testing, trade receivables confirmation, payroll checking, vouching of invoices and petty cash vouchers. This point they are asking कि कहाँ पर statistical sampling will be better for us. Which area will be better for statistical sampling? For statistical sampling, the large number of similar units should be there. That is, we can use the word homogeneous. Homogeneous items should be there for statistical sampling. Second, we can use this method on the following for the following purpose. Means when we want to check compliance testing, when we want to check the trade receivables confirmation, payroll, vouching of invoices and petty cash vouchers, ये सब area में you can use the statistical sampling method, and it mostly it will be used in the area where there are homogeneous transactions, means similar type of transactions. The next point is non-statistical sampling. The non-statistical sampling is an approach. The sample size and its composition are determined on the basis of the personal experience and the knowledge of the auditor. Means यहाँ पर you will not find any mathematical law or probability word in the point, because statistical sampling use probability and mathematics, but non-statistical sampling mathematics use नहीं करता ना ही प्रोबेबिलिटी यूज़ करता है. नॉन स्टैटिस्टिकल सैम्पलिंग सिर्फ और सिर्फ एक ऑडिटर का पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस पे डिपेंड करता है, एक ऑडिटर के जजमेंट उसकी नॉलेज पे डिपेंड करता है. सो एक्सपीरियंस एंड नॉलेज ऑफ द ऑडिटर मैटर्स इन नॉन स्टैटिस्टिकल सैम्पलिंग, बट the mathematics and probability matters in the statistical sampling. The next point is, this approach has been in common application for many years because of its simplicity in operation. Traditionally, the auditor, on the basis of his personal experience, will determine the size of the sample and express it in terms that number of pages or personal accounts in the purchase or sales ledger to be checked. पहले से traditionally we are using this for many years. That means non-statistical sampling is a simple approach. We can use it because it's simple. It is based on your experience. It is based on your experience and knowledge. So what they are telling that statistical sampling से ज़्यादा non-statistical sampling ज़्यादा use किया है हमने, and because of its simple approach, it is simple that we want to check 100 accounts are there, we want to check randomly 20 accounts out of the 100. We want to check number of pages out of 1000 pages, we will only check only 50 pages or say 100 pages. This is what we randomly decide based on our experience and based on our knowledge. For example, March, June and September may be selected in year 1 and different months would be selected in the next year. An attempt would be made to avoid establishing a pattern of selection year after year to maintain an element of surprise as to what the auditor is going to check. This is a great example. वो आपको बोल रहे हैं कि हमने एक साल में मार्च, जुलाई, सितंबर एक 3 महीनों का सेल्स चेक किया. But in the next year, we are not checking the sales or say anything of the same month. Then we will randomly select the other months, say Jan, Feb or some other month. But we will not allow the management to draw a specific pattern out of our audit. हम उनको कोई आइडिया नहीं देंगे कि हम किस पैटर्न से ऑडिट कर रहे हैं, किस मंथ का हम चेक करने वाले हैं. वी विल रैंडमली चेंज आवर ऑडिट क्राइटेरिया. And that is what the management will be surprised to know, and they will be very cautious if at all they are trying to perpetrate the financial statements. It is a common practice to check large number of items towards the close of the year so that the adequacy of the cut-off procedures can also be determined. They are saying that checking the accounts on the last close of the year will be more beneficial, as most of the adjusting entries are being passed at the close of the year. The non-statistical sampling is criticized on the grounds that it is neither objective nor scientific. Non-statistical sampling has two drawbacks: objective and scientific. These two characteristics are not present in non-statistical sampling, whereas the statistical sampling has some objective and it is based on some statistical methods. So they are telling that statistical method is not based on statistical method is based on objective, and statistical method is also scientifically determined. So for non-statistical method, this is a drawback. The expected degree of objectivity cannot be assured in non-statistical sampling because the risk of personal bias in the selection of sample items cannot be eliminated. Obviously, ऑब्जेक्टिविटी इसमें हम श्योरली नहीं बोल सकते, बिकॉज इट इज़ ट्रूली ऑडिटर्स, इट इज़ ट्रूली डिपेंडेंट ऑन ऑडिटर्स जजमेंट एंड देयरफॉर पर्सनल बायस का चांस है। ऑडिटर को कभी कभी बायसनेस हो सकता है कि मेरे को इतनी ही चीज़ सिलेक्ट करनी है, और ही माइट सिलेक्ट दोज सैम्पल्स एंड ही माइट बी इंडल्ज इनटू द with the management, and management might convince him to select only those samples that might not be the representative of the population. So personal bias वाला element non statistical sampling में होता है. Next, the closeness of the qualities projected by the sample results with that of the whole population cannot be measured because the sample has not been selected in accordance with the mathematically based statistical techniques. Even the sample जो हमने select किया है, the results derived out of the sample is not that trusted because we haven't used any mathematical methods. However, it may be stated that the auditor with his experience and knowledge of the client's business can evaluate accurately enough the sample findings to make audit decision, and the mathematical proof of the accuracy in some cases may be a luxury which the auditor cannot afford. Now, obviously it may be stated, they are clearly telling that auditor उसके experience से या knowledge से client के business उसने study किया है and he can accurately find the loopholes in this from the sample, but if he is at all using the mathematical methods, then sometimes it may be possible that it is a luxury for the auditor. The auditor may not find it relevant to use the statistics in finding of the sample. So he uses his personal experience and his knowledge to find out the sample, and he then try and find out any errors or frauds in the same sample so that the opinion that is based on the financial statements does not go wrong. The factors that should be considered for deciding upon the extent of checking on a sampling plan are following. Now, the topic that is coming are the factors that we should consider, that to what extent the checking should be done on the sampling plan. Size of the organization under audit. Before we start our sampling plan, सबसे पहली बात we need to check is the organization, what is the size of that organization, what is the state of internal control, adequacy and reliability of books, accounts and records, टॉलरेबल एरर रेंज, हम कितना एरर टॉलरेट कर सकते हैं. मतलब सबसे पहले यू विल डिसाइड दैट वेदर दैट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इज अ लार्ज ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, वेदर दैट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इज अ मीडियम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, और वेदर दैट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इज अ स्मॉल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. बड़ी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन होगी तो ज़्यादा हमको सैम्पल लेने पड़ेंगे. इफ इट इज़ अ स्मॉल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन देन वी विल डू सम लेस सैम्पल टेस्ट, एंड दैट इज़ हाउ वी आर डिसाइडिंग आवर सैम्पलिंग प्लान. Size matters. State of internal control, if the internal control is weak, we need to check more samples. If the internal control is strong, we will check less samples. Adequacy matters of the books and the records. If the books and records are not adequate, then sampling might fail. So adequacy of books of accounts also matter. Tolerable error range also matters, that what error we can tolerate and what range we have decided for tolerating the error. Degree of the desired confidence. Sampling plan also affects our confidence. If we are not confident enough of taking a small sample, then we might change our mind and we can take a large sample, we can add more samples to it, and until and unless a degree of confidence is achieved. In most of the circumstances, the evidence available is not conclusive, and the auditor always takes a calculated risk in giving his opinion. Obviously, that is very much sure that we are not giving a conclusive evidence, because we are not doing investigation. We are presenting only a persuasive evidence, because we are not giving the absolute assurance. We are giving a reasonable assurance. So they are telling that it is not possible that the auditor is able to find the conclusive evidence, and therefore he always take calculated risk in determining the sample, and then the opinion is based on the entire population. Next point, even by undertaking the 100% checking, the auditor does not derive absolute satisfaction. अगर वो 100% checking भी करता है, देन ऑल्सो ही इज़ नॉट एट ऑल श्योर कि जो मैंने किया है या तो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने जो दिखाया है इन द फिनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स इट इज़ 100% ट्रू. मीन्स इवन इफ यू चेक एवरीथिंग स्टिल यू आर नॉट एट ऑल श्योर that everything being checked is true and fair, even if it is being checked to the 100% level. There is no absolute satisfaction in our work. This state of uneasiness led pragmatic auditors to adopt the statistical theory of sampling to derive the necessary satisfaction about the state of affairs by checking only a part of total population of entries. So because of this problem, auditors, what they do, they resort to statistical sampling. They have started using statistical sampling so that whatever they are deriving on some meaningful criteria, and that the sample is the representative of the population. So it is true that because of we are not getting the conclusive evidence, we are not using statistics, so there are some things that objectivity will not be there. So because of that things, auditors now what they try and do that now we must resort to statistical sampling in order to give the best opinion, so that our opinion does not go wrong and population represent the true picture and the sample represent the true picture of the population. Next point, auditors realize that they can derive good satisfaction by undertaking a much lesser checking by adoption of this technique in the auditing process. What auditors feel is, they feel that if we use statistical method then we can derive a small sample and then also we can give a good and clear results. मतलब कम sample से भी आप अच्छा results दे पाओगे if you are using statistical methods. But non-sampling method, non-statistical method में एक problem यही है कि even if we are taking a good sample, then also we are not at all sure कि जो हमने opinion दिया है वो सही भी होगा या नहीं. The next point, it is a mathematical truth that the sample, if picked purely on a random basis, would reveal the features and characteristics of the population. By adopting the sampling technique, the auditor only checks a part of the whole mass of the transaction. Sampling technique में आप पूरा population check नहीं करते हो, आप कुछ part ही check करते हो. The satisfaction he used to derive earlier by checking all the transactions can be derived by a sample checking, provided he can put reliance on the internal controls and checks within the client's organization because they provide the reliability of the records. मतलब अगर वो पूरा 100% भी he is not checking ना, then also he can derive satisfaction only and only when he feels that जो हमारा client है, he has a good internal controls and he has good checks over the internal control, and so we can rely on the records that are given by the organization. So this is how they are presenting. Sampling के favor में भी बोल रहे हैं, sampling के against भी बोल रहे हैं. What should be the extent of desirable checking in any particular matter is for auditor to judge on the basis of his opinion about the state of control in a particular area. Now, to what extent आपको checking करना चाहिए in a particular matter, it is truly your judgment. Yes, truly और truly आपका judgment है कि आपको कितने हद तक check करना है उस sample को, तो वो डिपेंड करता है कि कितना अच्छा कंट्रोलिंग है उस एरिया में. इफ़ द एरिया इज अंडर प्रॉपर कंट्रोल देन द सैम्पल विल ऑलवेज बी विल गिव अ ट्रू एंड फेयर रिजल्ट. बट इफ द एरिया अंडर कंट्रोल हैज is not under control, that is it does not have a proper internal control, then the sample might not give you a desired results. So the extent of checking also depending upon the area of control in a particular thing. If control is satisfactory in its design and implementation, a much smaller sample can give the auditor the necessary reliability of the result he obtains. Means if they have good design, control and implementation of the proper design and implementation is there of the control, then obviously we can have a less sample and the auditor will rely upon the result he obtains. On the other hand, if in certain areas controls are slack or not properly implemented, the auditor may have to take a much larger sample for getting the satisfactory results. ये वही बात है, अगर हमको विश्वास है, if we trust the records, if we trust the internal control, then we will take a small sample and we will get our desired results. But if we don't trust, if we are not getting the audit evidence or we are feeling that the internal control is not good, then what we will do, we will take a larger sample to satisfy our opinion. So internal control good, a sample might be small. If the internal control is not good, the sample size will be large. Next point, another truth about this sampling technique should be noted. It can never bring complete reliability. It cannot give precisely accurate results. मतलब this is very much true कि sample कभी भी 100% सही नहीं हो सकता. Sample हम 100% accurate results नहीं दे सकता. Sample does not give the 100% precise results because ultimately it is based on your judgment or it is based on the statistical techniques. We are not checking each and everything. So 100% expected results are not being achieved by the sample, but close achievement is possible. So preciseness and 100% accuracy is not demanded from a sample. Next point, it is a process of estimation. We always estimate a sample. It may have some error. What error is tolerable for a particular matter under examination is a matter of the individual's judgment in that particular case. मतलब हम कितना error tolerate कर सकते हैं, that is up to our judgment. If we have that tolerable error range, then we can particularly feel that tolerable error is there, and therefore we can ignore that part of the thing of the sample. Example, Mr. X may consider that in his estimation of store's valuation, an error of 2% may not be material. He also decides that he needs at least 98% reliability of the result. He is to pick up the requisite number of items of the stores for reliability of the result. The requisite number he can get from the random number tables. The question of reliability is directly linked with the reliability of internal control and the books of accounts and records. When these are satisfactory, lesser degree of reliability of sampling estimation may suffice. If these are not satisfactory, the auditor may have to decide upon a higher degree of reliability which can only be obtained from a larger sample. Again and again they are giving you the same point. In the present case, he was error, tolerable error for him was 2%. Means वो ऐसा मान के चल रहा है कि 2% की गलतियाँ तो होगी, पर 98% should be सही. The 98% means that 2% is the tolerable error. If it exceeds the tolerable level error, then he will check the more samples and he will try and satisfy his opinion. But what he is saying, अगर internal control उनका अच्छा होगा, it is good, then we will place less reliability and we will check less samples. But अगर उनका internal control अच्छा नहीं होगा, then अगर हमको reliable results चाहिए, then we have to increase our sample size. Internal control good, the sample size may be small. Internal control is not good, the larger sample size is to be selected. The next point is, very often we come across this term when an audit is conducted on the basis of a part checking. This, it is said, owes its origin to the statistical theory of sampling. Next point, what is appropriateness of sampling approach? मतलब whether the sampling approach is appropriate or not, we will discuss in the following slides. In statistical sampling, the sample results are measurable as to the adequacy and reliability of the audit objectives, whereas in non-statistical sampling, the auditor's opinion determines the sample size, but it cannot be measured how far the sample size would be fulfill the audit objective. Means वो ऐसा बोल रहे हैं कि statistical sampling में हम हमारा adequacy and reliability हम measure कर सकते. The sample results are measurable in statistical sampling to be very precise. Measurable results we can get. But in non-statistical sampling जो आप sample size लेते हो वो purely आपके judgment पे ऊपर होता है, तो it is not measurable. It would not fulfill the objective of audit. Now, to summarize this part, please remember statistical sampling, measurement of audit objective, that whether the sample size selected was proper representative of the population means it is measurable. But in non-statistical sampling, the measurement of how far the sample size have proved our audit objective is not measurable. Statistical sampling, measurable results, and non-statistical sampling, the results are not measurable. Next point. The advantage of statistical sampling may be summarized as follows. The amount of testing, that is the sample size, does not increase in proportion to the increase in the size of area tested. मतलब ऐसा नहीं होता है कि अगर size the area is big then we need to check more samples, and if the area is small we need to check less samples. That the amount of testing does not increase in proportion to the increase in size. Yes, but not in same proportion. Same proportion means if 1000 samples are there and we are selecting 100 samples, but it does not mean that 10,000 samples are there, then we need to check 1000 samples. It is not necessary कि वही proportion में selection करना है. The amount of testing is not in proportion to the sample size. It is totally a freedom in the statistical sampling. Second, the sample selection is more objective and therefore they are more defensible. मतलब आपका जो objective है वो purpose जो है वो satisfy हो जाएगा because of this statistical method. Your sample would be more objective and इसीलिए हम हमारे points prove कर पाएंगे and we will be more defensible. The method provides a means of estimating the minimum sample size associated with a specific risk and precision. This method also have the minimum sample size जो आपको लेना चाहिए. If you find a specified risk and precision, आपको कुछ लगता है risk जैसा, तो कितना sample size आपको लेना चाहिए, even that is being given in this statistical sampling method. It provides a means for deriving a calculated risk. आपको calculated risk लेने का एक तरीका भी ये method देती है. And corresponding precision, that is इतना risk है कितना error है उसका सबका आपको ये help करती है. That is the probable difference in the result due to the use of a sample in lieu of examining all the records in the group using the same audit procedures. मतलब अगर आप sample लेते हो population में से कितना difference आ सकता है results में, वो सब आपको statistical sampling easily बता सकती है कि कितना results, कितना error results में आ सकता है. It may provide a better description of a large mass of data than a complete examination of all the data, since non-sampling errors such as processing and clerical mistakes are not as large. They are telling that mostly ये method से आपका जो point है वो prove हो जाता है. What point? Better description of a large mass of data and then a complete examination. पूरा examination करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, आप आसानी से ये method use करके easily derive कर सकते हो. Since non-sampling errors such as processing and clerical mistakes are not as large, इतनी mistakes processing और clerical mistakes की इतनी ज़्यादा problem नहीं होती है. So under some audit circumstances, statistical sampling methods may not be appropriate. The auditor should not attempt to use the statistical sampling when another approach is either necessary or will provide satisfactory information in less time or with less efforts. For instance, when exact accuracy is required or in case of legal requirements. So this is very clear that in all the situations statistical sampling is not suitable. Sometimes statistical sampling should be used and sometimes non-statistical sampling should be used. Among them, which method is to be selected, that solely depends on your judgment. You need to see that in which area you are doing the audit, and you need to decide whether statistical sampling will be more easier or will be more comfortable for you to adopt, or in other areas where non-statistical sampling will be more convenient. So it is up to the auditor's judgment, and now we will move on to the next topic. Now the next topic is how the sample design is to be selected and how to determine the size of a sample. Now the topic will be design and the size. अगर आप select करते हो एक sample को, then what should be the design of the sample and what should be the size of the sample, how to decide the design and how to decide the size. Now we will going to discuss on the same topic. When designing an audit sample, the auditor shall consider the purpose of the audit, procedures and the characteristics of the population from which the sample will be drawn. मतलब जब भी आप एक audit का sample design कर रहे हो तो आपको क्या चीज़ें ध्यान में रखनी है, what is the purpose of your audit and what characteristics your population is having. आपकी population में क्या characteristics होनी चाहिए या है, और उस हिसाब से ही आपके sample में वो characteristics होने चाहिए. And the same thing, you need to design your audit procedures in such a way that your purpose is fulfilled. तो आपका sample दो चीज़ों को ध्यान में रखना है, आपका पर्पस फुलफिल हो जाना चाहिए एंड आपकी पॉपुलेशन की कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स मिस नहीं होनी चाहिए. द कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन शुड बी देयर एंड योर ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स शुड बी डिवाइज्ड इन सच अ मैनर, द सैम्पल्स शुड बी डिवाइज्ड इन सच अ मैनर दैट योर ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स इज बीइंग कंप्लीटेड इन अ बेटर वे. द ऑडिटर शैल डिटरमाइन अ सैम्पल साइज sufficient to reduce sampling risk to an acceptably low level. आपको अपना sample size ऐसे डिज़ाइन करना है that your sampling risk is being reduced to an acceptably low level. मतलब what things you need to decide. First, your purpose should be satisfied. आप क्यों audit कर रहे हो, क्या audit करना है, your purpose should be satisfied. Secondly, the population characteristics should match the sample characteristics. आपके population की जो भी characteristics है वो आपके sample में होनी चाहिए. And third, sampling risk आपकी acceptably low level पे आ जानी चाहिए. मतलब आपने जो sample लिया है that sample should represent the population. Next, the auditor shall select the items for the sample in such a way that each sampling unit in the population has a chance of selection. हर एक sample को chance मिलना चाहिए selection होने का. Sample design. When designing an audit sample, the auditor's consideration includes a specific purpose to be achieved and the combination of audit procedures that is likely to best achieve that purpose. अभी हमने डिस्कस किया that हमारा पर्पस फुलफिल हो जाना चाहिए, ऐसे हमको सैम्पल का डिज़ाइन सेट करना है. Consideration of the nature of the audit evidence sought and possible deviation or misstatement conditions or other characteristics relating to that audit evidence will assist the auditor in defining what constitutes a deviation or misstatement and what population to use for sampling. What audit evidence you have, what is the nature of that evidence, क्या possible deviations हो सकते हैं, क्या possible misstatements हो सकते हैं, ये सारी बातें ध्यान में रख के आपको डिसाइड करना है कि विच पॉपुलेशन यू शुड यूज फॉर योर सैम्पल पर्पस. कौन सी पॉपुलेशन में से आपको सैम्पल निकालना चाहिए, किस में आपको मिसस्टेटमेंट होने का चांस ज़्यादा लग रहा है, किस में आपको डेविएशन होने का चांस ज़्यादा लग रहा है. In fulfilling the requirement of SA 500 audit evidence, when performing an audit sampling, the auditor performs audit procedures to obtain evidence that the population from which the audit sample is drawn is complete. मतलब हम जब भी हमारा audit sampling कर रहे हैं तो हम ऐसे procedures कर रहे हैं, we will select such evidences जिससे हमारा जो audit sample जो drawn हुआ है वो complete होना चाहिए. मतलब we should select the sample in such a way that it represent the population और हमारा purpose भी satisfied हो जाना चाहिए. तो sample design, what sample design says that your purpose should be fulfilled ultimately and आपको जो भी चीज़ें find करनी है, आपको जो भी evidence इकट्ठे करने हैं वो ऐसे इकट्ठे करने हैं कि आपको जो misstatement या deviation की possibilities लग रही है वो आपका sample आपको उसमें help करे. Next, the auditor's consideration of the purpose of the audit procedure includes a clear understanding of what constitutes a deviation or misstatement so that your purpose, your audit procedure includes a clear understanding. आपके procedure में there should be a clear understanding that what is a deviation and what is a misstatement, and only those conditions that are relevant to the purpose of audit procedure are included in the evaluation of deviations or projection of misstatements. मतलब आप वही चीज़ consideration में ले रहे हो जिससे आपको लग रहा है कि deviation होने का chance है या misstatement होने का chance है. Ultimately you will select that population and your sample will be drawn out of that population. Next, example, in a test of details relating to the existence of accounts receivable, मतलब ये accounts receivable की बात हो रही है, such as confirmation, payments made by the customer before the confirmation date but received shortly after that date by the client are not considered a misstatement. मतलब आपका जब आप बैलेंस चेक कर रहे हो, आप डिटेल्स चेक कर रहे हो कि एग्जिस्टिंग है कि नहीं है, ये डेटर्स है भी कि नहीं है, सच एज आप कंफर्म कर रहे हो. पेमेंट्स मेड बाय द कस्टमर बिफोर द कंफर्मेशन, आपने जब कंफर्म किया तब उसने पेमेंट नहीं किया था, उसने बिफोर पेमेंट कर दिया था, बट दैट रिसीव्ड शॉर्टली आफ्टर दैट डेट बाय द क्लाइंट आर नॉट कंसिडर्ड अ मिसस्टेटमेंट. ये मिसस्टेटमेंट नहीं है, ये सिर्फ आगे पीछे हो गया, टाइम का प्रॉब्लम है. Also, a misposting between a customer accounts does not affect the total account receivable balance. मतलब X का amount you have recorded in Y's account that does not change the account receivable balance. That means a misstatement is a different thing, and whatever you are selecting as a sample, see that is error. X के account Y के account में debit हो गए, that is error, but that is not intentional. Please keep in mind, fraud is intentional, but error is unintentional, but that doesn't affect the account balances. Next, therefore it may not be appropriate to consider this a misstatement in evaluating the sample results of this particular audit procedure, even though it may have an important effect on other areas of audit. हाँ, इससे दूसरे areas को फर्क पड़ेगा, but that doesn't mean कि आपने जो sample लिया है वो गलत लिया है. The sample method is not wrong, just you have find out some error, that sampling is fine. but there are some errors in the casting or posting, but that doesn't render your sample a useless one, such as the assessment of the risk of fraud or the adequacy of the allowance of doubtful accounts. In considering the characteristics of a population for test of controls, the auditor makes an assessment of the expected rate of deviation based on the auditor's understanding of the relevant controls or on the examination of small number of items from the population. Now, whenever you are understanding the characteristic of the population के test of controls को जानना चाहते हो, तो ऑडिटर क्या असेसमेंट कर रहा है? ही विल असेस द एक्सपेक्टेड रेट ऑफ डेविएशन. आपको क्या समझ में आ रहा है बेस्ड ऑन योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि आपके हिसाब से ये कंट्रोल्स कैसे हैं, या आप क्या करोगे, स्मॉल नंबर ऑफ आइटम्स पॉपुलेशन में से चेक करोगे और फिर आप असेस करोगे कि क्या एक्सपेक्टेड रेट ऑफ डेविएशन हो सकता है. सो दिस इज द थिंग यू नीड टू डिसाइड बेस्ड ऑन द टेस्ट ऑफ कंट्रोल्स. This assessment is made in order to design an audit sample and to determine the sample size. ये assessment कि क्या possible deviation आप रखना चाहते हो या हो सकता है, ये आपको help करेगा कि डिज़ाइन कैसा होना चाहिए sample का और sample size कैसा होना चाहिए. Example, if the expected rate of deviation is unexpectedly high, the auditor will normally decide not to perform test of controls. मतलब आपको लग रहा है, if you are expecting the deviation might be reasonably high, then don't perform test of controls, go into the detail audit. Similarly, if you consider the test of details, the auditor makes an assessment of the expected misstatement in the population. If the expected misstatement is high, 100% examination or use of a large sample size may be appropriate when performing test of details. In considering the characteristics of the population from which the sample will be drawn, the auditor may determine that stratification or value weighted selection is appropriate. जब भी आप पॉपुलेशन की कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स दे रहे हो, डिवाइड योर पॉपुलेशन इन स्मॉल स्मॉल स्ट्रेटास और वैल्यू वेटेड सिलेक्शन कैन बी डन. नाउ व्हाट इज दिस स्ट्रेटिफिकेशन और वैल्यू वेटेड सिलेक्शन वी गोना डिस्कस इन द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड्स. बट बिफोर दैट व्हाट दे आर ट्राइंग टू क्लियर यू दैट अगर आपको डेविएशन का चांस ज़्यादा लग रहा है, अनएक्सेप्टेबली हाई, then have a proper sample size, means a large sample size, or do test of details. Don't simply depend on test of controls. But if the deviation का जो chance है that is comparatively low, then you can depend on test of controls and you can select relatively a smaller sample size. मतलब if controls are strong, sample size would be small. Controls are strong, sample size small. If controls are weak, means deviation rate is high, then you should select a large sample size and you should check details, test of details should be done.